God, he knows who you are. He knows what you've done.
You are a good preacher and a good man. God will turn this around. You will see.
No.
Won't get away with this.
What, preacher? What are you gonna do?
Mr. Beckman, welcome back.
Hey, welcome back to Boys Bible Study. It's your favorite boys, the ones who just kind of open their mouths and let the Holy Spirit just reach into us and tell us what to say. I'm Ash. As always, I'm here with
Scott.
And today, we've got a very special one, bringing you the review of one of the most current Christian movies that's sweeping the Christian movie scene. We've got Beckman for you.
Woohoo!
Yeah, we've been anticipating this one for a little bit, right?
Yes, we have been all summer.
This is an interesting one. It's going to be a great springboard for us to discuss contemporary trends in Christian film. And even more importantly, we can talk about the big man himself. And I'm not talking about God. I'm talking about his son, David A.R. White, top Christian movie star and director. And he does a bit of everything. But he's in this film. What can we say about our boy David this time?
Well, I would like to say that he is so persistent, and this whole time in quarantine, he has just kept making things. On his Instagram, all of his posts are either him hanging out with his daughters or him working on a new project or both. And It's really steady and regular, and he just did not slow down all summer, it seems like.
That's so cool. And he's been a very consistent force in Christian film in the last, 5 to 10 years, certainly since I've been following the genre. And what's his role related to Pure Flix? Is he the founder of it?
Yeah, he's a co-founder of it. I don't know all the details if he's like CEO or CMO or whatever. But yeah, he's a head honcho there.
He's listed as a founder. It says that someone else is the CEO, but I'm just looking at it now. So, this is a major player in Christian cinema. He's been starring in very popular Christian films ever since he was young, and he's still at it. And, he, as we were just saying, founded Pure Flix, which has become synonymous with Christian film production and distribution. I think it's sort of like campy reference to like Netflix has stuck it in the contemporary imagination. A lot of people, even people who don't know a ton about Christian genre film, may have heard the name Pure Flix. So, he's got to be, he and Sorbo are the major players right now, right?
Yeah, and we've referred to him, Sorbo, and Kirk Cameron as like the holy trinity of Christian stars. But I like David A.R. White the best. I think he takes on the most diverse range of roles. I think he's the most genuinely positive about everything. Mm-hmm. Kirk Cameron and Kevin Sorbo. First of all, Kevin Sorbo is great in everything he's in. His real life persona is a bit smug. Kirk Cameron definitely is not always good at everything he's in, but he's always Kirk Cameron. And his real life persona, kind of smug.
Yeah.
David A.R. White is generally pretty solid in everything, always really positive, and his real life persona seems like a genuinely nice guy who really likes making stuff. And
I agree.
Excited to share it.
I agree. I think he'd be great to hang out with. I bet he'd have a lot of encouraging words for any young artist. Actually, I'm glad you started making comparisons, because literally in my notes I was like, discussion question: who's better, Kevin Sorbo or David A.R. White? First of all, I want to say I completely agree with your assessment of all three. However, even with the certain cons in mind, I think that my taste leans more to the Sorbo camp. I'm just like really obsessed with the roles he puts himself in, his look, his like attitude, his family, some of his things. I love the libertarian angle of Sorbo. Like, I love that he produced and was one of the stars of the film alongside Knight. And I hear a rumor. I can't say anything more than this, but I have an insider tip. There's a rumor he's making another libertarian film that is like currently in production. I don't know. Maybe that's knowledge out there, but I heard
That's
of it.
such great news.
Yeah, I heard of it
Beautiful
unofficially, but maybe it is actually out there. I don't know.
I do think Kevin Sorbo is actually the better actor. I think at his best, he's really strong.
Yeah, he's really strong. And I mean, he's compelling for the fact that he tends to play the heel, which I really appreciate about him. I think it's interesting when someone who's involved in Christian cinema actually casts themselves as the villain, or, you know, maybe the villain who turns his life around. But still, I find that to be like a unique and compelling aspect of his public and acting personas. But I mean, David A.R. White is born to play the hero. Like, there's no reason for him to cast himself as anything other than that.
Totally.
And yeah, he has a tendency to play the hero. I think of, you know, we'll get a little more into this film. I got to say, closest point of comparison for Beckman, which we watched today, is probably The Encounter 2. Where David A.R. White, and at least that's the first thing that popped into my head when I was watching.
As far as Christian movies, roles David A.R. White's done. I was going to say, there's a movie that's a lot closer.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot to say about the comparisons between Beckman and John Wick.
It's John Wick for it.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, it's Christian John Wick fan fiction. It's really interesting how much they just bit that style. But
yes.
But yeah, David A.R. White, one of the legends, just to sum it up. I always forget the name of that great film he made when he was young. You know, the one with Jesus, man.
Second Glance.
We've referenced it like so many times on this podcast, and I always forget. But yeah, from then until now, I mean, we've already seen him. He directed one of our favorite films, The Encounter. Have we done many films with him in it?
I think the last one we did was Bells of Innocence.
Right, of course. Bells of Innocence.
Which was another wildly entertaining action movie.
Yep. Right. David A.R. White is very suited to action roles. He's like a brawny and like handsome and like hero type. Like, he's really good at doing the like, you know, he's kind and compassionate and caring when there's no need to be violent. But when he has to defend himself and his family, he can go there. And he has a great way of playing the like tortured but ultimately like virtuous hero. And that's exactly what Beckman was. Yes.
And he definitely took it further than I've seen him in anything else as far as defending his family at all costs goes. Mm-hmm. Speaking of his family, though, I wanted to mention that so this is the day after Halloween. You know, we've had our big stand this year on convincing y'all to watch alternatives to secular Halloween movies that are demonic and lead you off the righteous path. And now that's over. But there are some Christians aren't as against it as we are. Mm-hmm. And David A.R. White is one of those Christians, and he made a post that was on his TikTok actually, but I saw it because I follow him on Instagram with his daughters, where they're just throwing tons of candy into their cart at Target, and it's pretty cute. They're just having fun, piling up candy for Halloween. And the comments were so polarizing. Like, I couldn't believe like what a controversial post it was.
Wow.
Like, just all over the place, from like, I'm dealing with real life demonic stuff right now. Please pray for me. I'm experiencing my own real life Halloween, which is like a wild thing to say.
Whoa, that's awesome.
People saying, this is pagan. It has pagan roots. What is this doing? I open Instagram. I can't believe this is coming from you. And then like other things that are just like, oh, how fun. Or just straight up, I don't celebrate Halloween. Okay. It's really just the whole array of how Christians respond to Halloween, basically, is in these comments.
Remarkable. Yeah, we're in an interesting phase. We're in the post Halloween calm down here. Yeah, that's actually a pretty relevant like hook into this film, I think, because like it shows that David A.R. White, of all Christian movie celebrities, seems to have no trouble flirting with secularism, flirting with secular media. And basically, like, I would say his philosophy is that if it has a good heart, then it's okay. I mean, in his mind, Halloween's no big deal. It's a holiday with candy and, things like that. Like, it's just for fun.
Yeah, it's for fun. You dress up, you play with your family, you see other kids in the neighborhood.
Right. Which I think is a perfectly reasonable reaction. But, the same thing is true of action movies, like in my opinion, like David A.R. White, action movies contain violence and, violence is bad. But at the same time, it's just a movie. Everyone watching is knowing that it's just a movie. And if the movie has a good message, then it's got to be fine, right?
Yeah, and at least they're not showing you sex or anything.
Right.
Not necessarily anyway. That for me, growing up, it was not a big deal to watch action movies where people get killed. But if there's like anything the least bit titillating, like sexually, like no good.
Yeah, bad news. That's interesting. I'm sure there's been a lot of writing on why that's the case, but as far as entertainment goes, that's like absolutely true with regards to what passes like our culture's taboos on like what is good for kids or family friendly or however you want to put it. Because Beckman was a very violent movie, like no bones about it.
Extremely so. I really felt like it could have. I mean, we're making comparisons to John Wick, but that's not like a loose comparison.
Right.
There's that level of fighting and people dying going on. And the pace, like everything about it pretty much.
Very much so. There's, a lot to compare it to. There's some contrast too. I'd love to talk about that a little more, but I would say, I'm sure we'll have some observations as we're chatting, but let's get into the film. I'd love to describe the premise of this. Yeah, let's chat about it. Let's bring it there.
Well, first of all, there's a great cast in this movie,
yes.
First of all. And in the first minute, we see Burt Young, who many of you listeners may remember as Paulie from like the first 5 Rocky movies. And if you haven't, when you hear him speak and see him, you'd be like, okay, that guy's probably in a Rocky movie. Also, very notably in this film is William Baldwin. We do have a Baldwin brother in this film. Billy
is here. And
my guy, who I prefer to Steven. I feel like usually we see Stephen Baldwin in Christian movies.
We usually see Stephen. We most recently saw him in I Fell in Love with the Church Girl. But I agree. I mean, Billy has I don't know, like Steven has this very kind of like ingenue face. Like, I don't know. But Billy, I feel like he was really suited to this role. He is the villain of this film, one of the villains of this film. He plays a sadistic cult leader named Reese. And he has this very kind of like blank, like snake-like attitude and facial expression as he's saying these kind of like grandiose, cultish pronouncements.
And we were talking about it a little bit during the movie, but I think one failure in the movie, and this isn't like a major failure, but I just think would have made it more fun, was to not have as much cult stuff. Like they had the setup there. It would have been cool to see more cult stuff.
I completely agree. That was one of the most obvious like flaws of the film, in my opinion. And in general, I mean, we could talk about this now or we could get it toward the end, but like I basically think in general a lack of desire to embrace campiness in this film was its undoing. I have my theories as to why that is. Maybe we could get into that as a final discussion. But
Interesting.
Yeah. Who else do we have in here though? Jeff Fahey. Yeah.
He's been on a lot of action movies. He was in the Lawnmower Man. He plays the Lawnmower Man, basically. Trying to word this appropriately. He's a slow guy who becomes very smart in the Lawnmower Man. And I think that might be the role he's best known for. But he's been in a lot of not low budget, but lower budget action stuff over the years. He's got a great look.
A great look. His IMDb is stacked. He's in a lot of things that are currently being completed as well. So he's working.
And the director did all 3 Revelation Road movies. So that's pretty cool.
Yes.
Definitely something we're going to cover on this pod at some point.
Very much so. We've pledged to cover the Revelation Road trilogy, another take at Christian action film, which that has both David A.R. White and Sorbo in it, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, Sorbo's in it too?
Yes, Sorbo
cool.
is absolutely in it. I've only seen the second one or maybe third, but he plays the villain. I actually have not seen all the Revelation Roads, so Sorbo definitely plays a villain in the one I saw.
Oh, that's
so cool. It's really good. There's a funny, I mean, not to get too into it, but Revelation Road is riffs on Mad Max themes, and like Sorbo plays the head of this kind of like, they're supposed to be like, Mad Maxy, like bondage-y, but because it's a Christian film, they just dress them in like Uggs and leather jackets to sort of evoke like fur and leather. It's really funny.
That's great.
So good. Yeah, Sorbo's wearing like a scarf and like Ugg boots. It's very cool. Billy Baldwin and Jeff Fahey, I believe, are credited as the producers on this film. So they had a lot to do with its production as well.
That explains a lot, because those two have been so embedded in like Hollywood and Hollywood action stuff over the years. And this movie does not, I don't think if you didn't have a relationship to Christianity and this movie came on, I don't think you would question that it's a Universal Pictures action movie.
Yeah.
Which is what it is.
Yes, it is.
So I think that makes sense that they were involved overseeing that, because it really felt right. And it looked good. It looked good, and the action was pretty strong. Not like
John Wick level.
Yeah, not necessarily like newly inspired choreography or anything, but it was well done. It was well done fight choreography, well edited.
Very much so.
But yeah, that's actually, I know you wanted to wait till the end to get into the campy stuff, but I think that does make fight scenes better. Like you and I were both talking about how some of the fighting was getting a little boring, not because it was bad, but because I think since we're not necessarily like huge action fans, that like just seeing a fight isn't that exciting unless there's something unique about it.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily something like against the movie. It's just something that if you do make it unique, then it's more fun for more people.
Exactly. And yeah, I'm gonna say my theory on that, because like, so it's impossible to not compare this film to John Wick, because for some reasons that we'll detail, it makes references that are like absolutely just taken from John Wick's story and John Wick's universe. But the thing that this film fails in is that, so, Christian films have always treaded a fine line between being in their own realm and being mainstream. A lot of them seem to have an aura where it's like, we wish this was a mainstream movie, or, hey, this is as good as a mainstream movie, right? But a lot of them, fail because people find the Christian message kind of like cringy or laughable if you're a secular audience member who, is resistant to Christianity. So, there's ways of cleverly disguising that. And there's been a trend recently more and more to basically make films that could pass as secular movies that don't proselytize, but just have the themes kind of tucked in. But the thing is, I think that what's happening now is the movies are getting the divide between Christian and secular films is getting smaller and smaller. And you were just saying, I mean, this looks just like a slightly lower budget Universal Pictures action film, like a contemporary B-level action film. Like, you wouldn't change the channel necessarily if you were just like zoning out looking for an action film. But because of that, what I think is happening right now is that Christian films are afraid of going the intentional camp route, because they're afraid of their movie being considered campy to a secular audience. But the problem is, like, that's what made John Wick so fun, was that it was like cool as hell, you know, and there's all this well choreographed action, but there were also really like over the top, like campy characters that you meet along the way who pique your interest and would get you more invested in their battle. And I think the fact that this film left everyone just being kind of generic, like contract assassins, like fighting each other, it was like, you know, I wanted to see some like Kill Bill type shit or some John Wick type shit, you know, like that would have actually been in the service of the film. It wouldn't have, you know, I think it would have made the movie more acceptable to a secular audience. It wouldn't have done the opposite, you know?
And demanded anyone's attention more as well. If you even just thinking about that opening scene in John Wick 3 with Boban Marjanovic, the 7'3" NBA center for the Dallas Mavericks. That fight scene's not particularly remarkable. Like any of the fight scenes in Beckman were pretty much just as well choreographed as that opening one, but none of them were a 7'3" guy with like a unique face.
Yeah.
Like that's that in itself. You don't have to do much more after that to get it right, you know?
Right. I would say the closest that Beckman came was that weird scene with the like 3 brawny muscle bears wearing like yellow aprons for some reason. But even that just kind of felt like they were stewards of some, you know, contemporary, like, I mean, just some like typical crime operation.
I did appreciate them though. They looked like guys from I forget the name of it. It's that Pure Flix Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, Sons of Thunder, you were just saying?
Yeah, Sons of Thunder.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I love that exists.
I would not be surprised if they're all in Sons of Thunder.
Yeah, maybe they are.
But even in that case, that those were like interesting characters, but they should have taken it further with then like what their weapons are, or like the ridiculous way they're trying to kill him, you know?
Right. The Kill Bill thing, you know what I mean? Let's say there's a fighter who has a special technique, or a special weapon or a special story. Like I would like to know, because a lot of this was just gun battles with different people, and it got tedious by the time the third act rolled around. And we had Billy Baldwin as this charismatic cult leader who was going to do like a ritual, and who was apparently, I think his character was supposed to be like the son of a billionaire or something. And, you know, that had a lot of potential, but it was very underused. And and like I said, my theory as to why that is because of the insecurity of Christian filmmakers to they don't want their film to be campy, but in doing so, it loses a lot of charm. The Christian film will only, specifically the Christian film industry will only start to rival the secular film industry if they're able to like embrace a bit of irony, but in the right way.
You just have to go all the way in whatever you're making,
right?
And not think that going all the way makes you like more secular or something like that. Because I would think that if you're coming at it like my heart's in the right place and I'm really passionate about making something great to pull people's attention to this, then like think of when we talked about this in a pod that might be coming out after this one. I'm not sure. But The Exorcist is a Christian movie, and that movie goes all the way, and people remember it like it came out yesterday.
Exactly. And, you know, that's another good point of comparison, because like this film is also playing with like, you know, if we're talking about like the tension between the secular film world and the Christian film, you know, the quote unquote Christian film world, is this movie appropriate? You know, we've talked about on the pod The Exorcist basically being a Christian film, and it's like kind of funny that it's not accepted as that because of what it depicts on the screen. I mean, is this film any different? It's very violent. It's bloody.
Yeah, and they did a lot of it all the way, but not enough of it.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I feel like I'm being like a little harsh on the film the way I'm coming across so far. I really did think it was really well made, but I think I think the reason is because it was almost there.
Yes.
And a lot of the movies we watch are unique for reasons that are a lot different than it being almost really good.
Yes. No, I completely agree. I feel the exact same way. I think the film was well done, entertaining. But it's like, well, it's like the uncanny valley bell curve or whatever. It's like CGI. Like CGI, the more it approaches, realistic, the easier it is sometimes, depending on how it's done, to see the differences in between, what is realistic and what is CGI. As these Christian films are approaching their secular counterparts, the differences between the two become clearer. And I think that made it, very easy to criticize in this film, even though it was, like you said, really well done. David A.R. White's a legend.
And I think having, I don't know if this was Jeff Fahey and William Baldwin's involvement or not, but they did do a good job staying on the PG-13 line, like Batman style of like, how many people can you like murder? And the viewer is very aware that they were just murdered, but still be PG-13. And they knew how to do that perfectly. They really like danced on that. So you would just hope that at that point they do that through, whatever the ritual was going to be, they could have made that. I have no doubt they could have made that really intense.
Yeah, come on. I was hoping for that. Well, it's like the Kevin Sorbo Antifa movie, The Reliance. It promised us so much with regards to its inclusion of Antifa in the film as the villain. And it abandoned that in favor of like a moody family drama in the woods. Whereas this film was like, oh, this cult leader, this billionaire cult leader is going to do a ritual. And then the movie is just like assassins like having gun battles in a warehouse, Oh,
and we didn't even mention, this is all of his cult members are because, or like a lot of them at least, were because he trafficked them.
Right.
There's like a child trafficking ring going on.
Right. Which is a huge hot button issue, especially right now in popular culture. I can't think of a topic people are more riled up about.
Oh, for sure. And in the Christian church in general, that is something that people get pretty excited about because it's crazy. It's really messed up, obviously. Yes. But they were doing everything well enough that I didn't even think about it in those terms. I wasn't like rolling my eyes when that happened. So, yeah, they should have just kept pushing it.
I agree. Let's give just a bit of synopsis. I will say that the character of Beckman, which is David A.R. White playing the titular role, he is a former contract killer. We see him in gun battles when the movie begins. And he gets injured and is taken in by the pastor of a nearby church. He hides away.
Played by Jeff Fahey.
By Jeff Fahey, yes. He lives there. He's nursed back to health. He learns a lot from Jeff Fahey's character. And then this character actually passes away. And somewhere along the line, Beckman gets ordained. Whether officially or unofficially, I'm not sure, but he's referred to as a reverend, and he becomes the pastor of this church. And he is just like, a really interesting pastor who's been through a lot. And we see him in the beginning of the film giving sermons, but having some doubts as to whether someone with a past such as his could ever be forgiven.
And we meet a character who basically when he's preaching in church and they show the audience, there's two people they keep focusing on who conveniently are one sitting right behind the other. And one is, I don't know if she like works for the church or what their relation is exactly. But she's definitely almost like an aunt or grandmotherly figure to him. And then a teen as well who they keep showing this kid, and we're like not really sure why.
Yeah. This handsome but weird looking teen named Tom, and the woman you're referring to is called Abigail.
Yes, and so Beckman and Abigail are sitting down at the church. I think that maybe they're about to eat or something, and someone shows up at the door, and it turns out that it is Tabitha, who is a 17-year-old runaway, and that's all we know. And she says, what's the name if she says that said I could come here? I think it was the old pastor.
Yeah, it was the pastor.
Played by
His
Jeff
name's
Fahey,
fucking Philip.
Philip, yeah. And so at first, Beckman's about to turn her away, and then he lets her in, and then it cuts to a year later. She's his daughter. They get along great. She has a regular life now. She's about to get into college. It's very sweet. And then, out of nowhere, guys burst down the door, and they whisk her away, and they kill Abigail.
Oof. Yeah, they beat up Tom, kill Abigail, kidnap Tabitha, and that means that Beckman has to take action. You know, the thing he loves the most is ripped from him, which is his adoptive daughter, Tabitha. Tabitha she just got her acceptance letter to go to college. You know, she was turning her life around. He bought her a car, a phone. You know, he's just showering her with as much love as possible as her adoptive
A guitar.
father.
We even saw her performance in church. She's well on her way to being the front woman of a hoop band.
And now our very own adopted daughter, Tabitha, wants to inspire us with something she's been working very hard on. Let's give her a hand.
Rock of ages, clear for me. Let me hide myself in thee. Let the water and the blood from the wounded side that flows.
Yeah, I honestly, with everything we went through with the film, I completely forgot that she was like a folk singer in that way that I don't want to spend too much on this, but I just can't help but be like, why does all folk music sound like that nowadays? Like there's an aesthetic of singing and guitar playing that's like so weird. It's like, I love folk music. Like there's so much good folk music in the world. And it doesn't have to sound like this. Like everything sounds like a fucking Broadway musical now or whatever. I don't get it. You know, if we're looking to that movie, I Still Believe, you know, the KJ Apa movie, all those fucking songs.
Yes, another. This could maybe be mainstream movie.
Right, exactly. Another 2020, and which goes to show you 2020. This is absolutely a trend in Christian filmmaking. But yeah, all the songs in that movie were delivered in this very like showy, like earnest, you know, really well performed pop voice. And that was the case with Tabitha's just random, just like acoustic guitar performance in this film at church before she gets kidnapped.
Actually, I forgot. That's the way she's found, actually, is because Tom, our random team boy we're focusing on, he was taking video of her doing that performance, and then he showed it to somebody he hangs out with, and that led to them realizing that they knew where she was then. It was whoever she ran away from.
Right. Yeah, and we find out that she ran away from essentially a cult. Like when Billy Baldwin comes to Beckman's church to collect her, he's like, you know, your mind is weak. You're running back to prison, my dear. Like, come with me. I will show you true freedom. I've given you a taste of what true freedom is like. You know, being a real creep.
Do you remember that night? When all was in balance. Underneath all those stars. You pledged yourself to me. The ritual night is upon us again. I pledge to be your guide, and I will. My child, we must finish what we started.
But she has to go with him. And this means that Beckman who we've already learned, has a violent past. It's time for him to get back in the game. He has to make some calls.
And boy, does he.
Mr. Beckman, welcome back. Or should I call you Reverend now?
Just Beckman.
As you wish. What can we do for you?
I need an address and weapons.
Mr. Beckman, you remember the rules, the price?
I'll pay it.
Very well. Whenever you're ready.
He calls the quote-unquote network.
Network.
And they, a British woman answers, of course. That is your point of contact when you are a mercenary for hire, is a very intelligent British woman. In every movie, in all movies where this happens. And that setup is, again, extremely similar to John Wick. She's the same person who lets all the assassins know that there's a hit out on somebody. Similarly to John Wick, there's a board people can check to see catch of the day or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the deal is that they give you the stuff you need, and then they'll make a call for you to do something, some kind of job or favor, and then you're good, whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we have it's established in the universe of this film that just like in John Wick, there's basically an organization of assassins. There's a shadow network of assassins that follow a certain code. The fantasy of John Wick was that there's, people moving among us who are operating in this secret, mysterious, and violent code. And even though they might seem aggressive, violent, chaotic, they're actually playing by a very specific set of rules that almost make their pursuit seem noble. And that similar premise is deployed in Beckman. Beckman's depicted as going back into the game. And I mean, without really getting into the specifics of all of his battles, he meets some cool looking people along the way. He just basically has to kill whoever's in front of him to help continue on his goal of finding his daughter Tabitha.
And he does. I thought there would be more of him knocking somebody out, or because he is a preacher. That wasn't just a cover. He obviously believed it too. So I thought there would be more of just subduing and knocking people out, but no. He kills people straight up. He shoots people in the hand to show that he's serious to a different person. He was pretty cool.
Yeah, a very cool pastor. Move over, pastors wearing $600 sneakers.
Yeah.
This pastor literally kills people. So he's got to be the
Joel
coolest.
Osteen would never.
Yeah,
I don't care what he says.
Yeah, show me the day when Joel Osteen takes the shot, and then I'll fully respect him. But no, Beckman's cool as hell, and that is, and that actually becomes a theme in the film because, which is funny because I almost don't think the theme is fully explored, but he's killing people, and he runs into again that other troubled teen, Tom, who's at his church, who's the one who inadvertently led the cult leader back to Tabitha, who had escaped him. And Tom witnesses him kill some people, and he basically is saying to Beckman, he's saying, I thought you said turn the other cheek. I thought you said mercy. You inspired me to do that in my life. I didn't even, I could have gotten into a fight earlier, and I didn't because I was thinking of you. So, why are you doing this?
Killing those men isn't gonna bring her back. Go to the cops.
You can't go to the cops.
You can.
Tom.
This is because of you. This kid got in my face at a party. I could have beat him. But I thought about what you taught me. And blessed are the meek. Blessed are the merciful. I just let him hit me. And he kept hitting me until, I don't know, he just kind of got freaked out. But he came up to me later. He wanted to know why I didn't fight back. So I told him. He told me he was sorry. He wanted to change his whole life around. You hope that happened. When life is a tumultuous storm.
I know what I said.
So stop. Remember who you are. Reverend!
Gotta say, I think that's a really good question.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You could see that real like dismay and disappointment in his face. Like, you taught me a different thing than this. Yeah. Don't you practice what you preach? Literally. Right. And I could relate. I had a situation in high school where I was at a camp. We drove all the way out to Colorado with like our youth group. And it was like the boys and girls were split up at night, of course. And we were around the fire, and my youth pastor admitted to like watching porn and feeling bad about it. And when he said that, I was like pretty judgmental, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I was like, don't you just pray that shit away? like you're supposed to? You have a wife. He was married.
Oh, that's kind of fucked up.
So it's hard to tell in that situation if somebody has like a real problem or if they like look at porn once a month and like feels
right.
About
that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing.
But either way, I felt the same way as Tom did in this. I was like, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
You're up there in your pulpit saying one thing, and then you're at home with your 56K modem waiting for nudes to load in front of you.
He waited 40 days and 40 nights for a 40-second MOV file to download. Yeah, well, and that it's funny because I feel like there's tension there in the whole movie, and I actually wasn't completely satisfied, I've got to say, with the way that was teased out, because like, again, are we rooting for him or are we not? Like, the movie puts you in a place where it's like, I mean, I wanted him to, survive and get his daughter back because, it was a really bad situation, but like, I didn't really find myself like cheering when he killed someone, like in John Wick, again, hate to compare these films, but you just can't help it. In John Wick, like you just, the tension is just so well done that you find yourself like every time he makes it through a battle, you're like, oh, thank God he made it through, even though he's like a conflicted like anti-hero, in a way. You still are like rooting for him, and like it was kind of hard to muster that same enthusiasm, even though I really like David A.R. White.
Well, they do a good job with John Wick too, of John Wick as well, I should say. There's 3 of them. They do a good job with your suspension of disbelief, where even though he's the star, obviously he's going to make it to the end. Every fight feels like he could lose,
right?
Whereas this, even though the fighting was pretty well done, I never questioned that.
Me too. And there was even that one scene where he does lose. And then the assassin who hunts him down, because this is the point in the film where the network has put out a hit on him. And so every assassin who's in the network can win $100,000 for killing him. So he's on the road and he's beset upon by an assassin who we have not at all met, who has nothing to do with this conflict, but wants to maybe collect the bounty on his head. And they get in a gun battle, and literally like Beckman just loses. Like he's like on the ground and the assassin's holding a gun to him, and the assassin's like, so tell me why you're doing this. And then Beckman gives him his answer, well, they killed my daughter, or so he thinks, and I have to just kill 4 people to avenge it. And he's like, I will let you live. Like, you are one of the few people I have spared. The world is better with you in it.
I have killed 436 people, and I spared only 4. I believe that because of my actions, the world is a better place. You will be number 5. Mercy is a rare and powerful tool. I believe the world will be a better place with you alive.
Yeah, why does he think that? I don't really understand. Right. But he says, like, I've killed 436 people. I've let 4 go. Now I will let 5 go. And his name was the Administrator.
Okay. I didn't catch that. Calm down. Calm down.
But as far as camp goes, they should have had more characters like that, right?
Yeah, that is true.
Like,
that is true.
Because since he's the only guy who's like that, it's not played up enough. But if everybody had like some goofy name like the Administrator, then they would have played them all up more. Yep. And there was one character who I was looking forward to being in it, and it wasn't one of the better fight scenes, but I still wanted more, who's a professional wrestler. And so like I thought her scene was going to be like the fighting was going to be like really crazy, but I imagine at that point it's like, well, sure, she has the skills, but realistically, David A.R. White has not really done a movie like this to this extent before. So even though he's very solid in his fighting choreography, like it's not his regular job like it is for her. So
that's a really good point. And yeah, according to IMDb, the actress you're referring to is named Danielle Moinet. I think that's how you pronounce it. She plays a character named Isabel in this film, who's an assassin who, is basically only really in for a scene. But she and her like romantic partner are fighting Beckman, and at one point she says to her assassin partner / romantic partner like let's do it, Papa Bear, like there's a little bit of a campy thing to it, but they're just wearing like suits, and like she's like a pro wrestler. They're like why couldn't she have like picked up some furniture and thrown it, you know what I mean, like having a female pro wrestler in an action film. I feel like there's potential to do some really cool plays with your expectation as an audience member. And
they literally got her into the smallest room that there's a fight scene in.
What's up with that? So, these are the things along the way that left me wanting more from Beckman. But
again, because it was almost there, like they had all the tools there, and it was shot really well, and the setup was there.
I agree. Yeah, no, I'm feeling the same way. That's the tricky part with approaching, the achievement with film, which is such a grandiose medium in general, is that, the closer you get, the starker the differences between you and what you were trying to attain, the starker they are, So
True.
It makes it easy to judge, but I definitely think anyone listening should know that as longtime fans of David A.R. White's work, we appreciate this as like a new chapter in his career, and like definitely one of the most like ambitious and tightly constructed projects of his. I mean,
anyone who's a David A.R. White fan, you can't skip this one.
Oh my God, no. Run, don't walk. The first act, I was really like had high hopes. I was like, oh, this is going to be like a riveting watch all the way through, and yeah, it was. I mean, as a fan of the genre, I really liked it. But the first act was solid. I enjoyed the story they were building, and his turn to be a preacher was very interesting from an assassin.
And he was going more all over the place early on too. Like he finds that like Sicario style hideout stash house in the middle of nowhere, and goes in like machine gun ready, kills a bunch of people, and then finds what was her name? She's one of the four who kidnapped him.
Janice.
Yeah, he goes to Janice's house. And
I liked her.
Like, is getting hurt. Yeah, me too. I know I've seen her in something too. I don't know what, but
Kira Reed Lorsch. I'll open it, but go on.
But yeah, he gets her and her brother and her husband. He holds them up at gunpoint, and they're like out in the middle of the woods somewhere. And then there's like a fight that breaks out there. And like I really liked having to go all over the place like that, which is another thing, a really strong point of John Wick too. It's not just that the characters are campy and like diverse to an extent that is like not realistic in the world, which is great. But the places are as well. So here I felt like they were doing a better job of that in the beginning than they did later on. I did like seeing the gunfight in a brewery, though. It could have been a more exciting fight, but I don't think I've seen that before.
Yeah, that was neat. Almost made me wish they played with that aspect. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Because when I was just seeing that, I was like, oh man, there are a lot of options here. Somebody could like end up in a vat and drowned.
Yeah,
or like you like shoot holes in it and there's like beer spraying out and like gets in somebody's eyes or something. Or I don't know. It seemed like there was a lot to play with, and they didn't.
Just one aside. The character Janice was portrayed by an actress named Kira Reed Lorsch. And I looked through her IMDb. I don't find a ton that I see here, but I will say that early on in her career in the 90s, she almost exclusively appeared in like sort of softcore type things, like B-movie softcore, and under the name Kira Reed. So, I mean, as a lover of those type of films, I'm very curious because honestly, she was one of the most compelling actors in the film to me. She was like beautiful and had this really distinctive like look to her. And I found myself like, she was a great character actress. Like I found myself really compelled by her. So very cool. So yeah. So as far as wrapping up the plot goes to Beckman, as he's moving through his journey, you know, killing whoever stands in his way if he needs to, which he does quite a bit. The final two confrontations in the film are with a man who we find out is like a trafficker, a human trafficker. I mean, it doesn't like explicitly say sex trafficking, but I mean, it might as well be. That's where he flips through like a binder in his office and sees a picture of Tabitha with like, it says 15, you know, and says her height and eye color and stuff like that. And, you know, it's very perverse. And he starts saying this shit to Beckman that's like, well, don't blame me. Like, God was the one who created the world.
Yes.
I am not responsible for all the evils of the world. Why don't you ask God about that, preacher, huh? Who is responsible for creating this whole mess? I didn't ask for this. To be born into this? I came up from nothing. I am just playing the garbage hand I was dealt, trying to make $1 like everybody else. And you don't get to judge me, the things you've done. Ah, come on. These girls, they were never gonna make it. You know that. Not one of them. Orphans, addicts, homeless. Now, we only sell to the best select clients. Millionaires, billionaires. We did these girls a favor!
Which I thought was like a pretty... that was an interesting way of like, I'm going to say that to get out of anything now. I'll be like, I mean, it's not my fault. Like God messed up when he made the world. I'm just doing my best. Like you can really trace almost anything back to that.
Well, if you believe that God's all powerful.
Sure.
If you don't, then you can't really put that on him.
Yeah. Very convenient. Very convenient to say, Mr. Human Trafficker.
Why didn't Beckman, as a pastor, try to refute any of that? I guess he didn't give a shit because he's like, I'm going to kill you. I hate you. You're a terrible person. I am seeing Tabitha in the midst of a whole binder full of women.
Yeah.
And you, who knows what happened to all of them. And you're clearly a piece of shit. So you think he's probably pretty blinded by rage to have any kind of philosophical conversation at that point. But it would have been cool if he did anyway and then shot him.
See, again, that would have been, I would have loved to see that in the movie. That would have been fun and interesting. I mean, a pastor who is a hitman for hire. Like, that's so compelling. Like, I felt like there could have been scriptural discussions throughout the whole film in a way that would have still been, like, fun and clever and not off-putting for secular audiences, you know?
Yeah, and I thought at a point it was going to have more of a Sorbo-esque angle where he defends his killing of people, because like the couple of times people do mention that to him, he just doesn't care because he's like, I'm just getting revenge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's all I can think about. Whereas I feel like if it was a Sorbo, like libertarian or faux libertarian setup, then it would be like, these are my rights and I'm defending it.
Yep.
And here's a random part of the Constitution and a random part of the Bible that I'm basing this on.
Yep, absolutely. But I mean, speaking of you know, revenge and killing versus mercy. So, you know, I think it's pretty understandable in the logic of the film why he chooses to execute the human trafficker. Again, very hot button issue. I don't think there's anyone in that audience who would say, well, I'm a Christian. I don't believe in murder, but like those guys, they deserve worse than death. A lot of people understandably, say things like that. But when he gets to the absolute final confrontation, the final boss, which is Billy Baldwin as Reese, the cult leader, he encounters him on the night of this ritual. He's on the beach with 2 plumes of fire. His acolytes and followers are wearing like red drawings on their foreheads, some sort of symbol. And they're awaiting some kind of magical transformation. And Beckman goes there to confront him. And I mean, Reese can't really do anything. Like he's like, all right, this is my destiny. He's going to kill me. It was a great time being your teacher, everyone. And he just like kneels and puts his knife down and smiles. And Beckman like pauses for a while and he's just like, no, you have to live with yourself.
This man has come with a very specific purpose. Haven't you, preacher? To transition me into the flames. To end my journey here as Reese, your teacher.
No. You live with yourself. Your judgment will come soon enough.
And then he leaves to rescue Tabitha, who he finds out is being held captive in like a barrel nearby. So he frees her. But again, I like the idea that he doesn't want to kill people. Like, I think that's an interesting angle as a reformed assassin. But I thought that like the line in the movie, like, you have to live with yourself, was a little silly because like this cult leader is like obviously a sociopath. Like he obviously has no trouble living with himself.
Right.
He probably has the least trouble living with himself than any other character in the film because like almost every other mercenary, when put under actual threat of death, like showed a little cracks around their facade, where like, listen, just don't hurt him or whatever. Like, but they to protect a loved one or protect themselves, like in a moment of actual life and death, they cracked at least a tiny bit. But he never did, this cult leader. He was always ready to die or ready to do anything to fulfill his like sick vision. So he was like, you have to live with yourself. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I will.
Yeah. And he's like actively enslaving all these people, basically.
Yeah.
So
like he could have freed all these people.
Yeah, really him and the trafficker were the 2 main ones who will be like, well, yeah, that person needs to not take part in society.
Yeah, like, yeah, if you killed this cult leader, then there's like 40 people standing around you who would all suddenly have no boss. That seems like that could be a transforming thing.
They could have started going to his church instead.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Could have finally started that hoop band with Tabitha.
Oh my God, Scott, you're a genius. If the movie ended with Tabitha and friends she had made in the cult starting a hoot band and performing in the church, like, now that's
they just
a Christian
become
movie.
polyphonic spree.
Yeah. The whole movie is the polyphonic spree origin story. Oh, that's so sick. Oh my God, that's the sickest shit I've ever heard. Unfortunately, that does not happen, but we do see the assassin who spared Beckman's life earlier getting a call from the network. The administrator, right. The administrator gets a call from the network, and the network says, it's time to finish the job on Beckman.
It's done.
And Beckman?
He's not here.
Find him. Finish it.
And credits roll. Thus, leading us to believe that we could be in store for a Beckman 2. 2 Beck, 2 man.
Yeah, what's John Wick 2 called? It's going to be something similar to that.
Yeah, I don't remember. Did it have a subtitle?
Maybe not. I'm going to look it up, though.
Yeah, me too. John Wick Chapter 2, John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum.
Okay, wait a minute. So, like, the
chapter thing.
John Wick movies were called chapters? Yeah,
yes.
That was a thing in this movie, too. They did different chapters.
That's a good point. We didn't even mention because the movie was stylistically, I thought it was fun. It was divided into different chapters. Like a title card would come up that would say like Chapter 2, Tabitha, like Chapter 3, Janice, Chapter 4, etc. And yeah, no, the John Wick films had the naming convention of chapters.
And this wasn't a John Wick thing, I don't think. I don't remember anyway. But they did the thing that you, Julian, and I really love. That's not just a Christian thing, just a thing we love in general in movies, where they kept skipping around at the beginning, where it was be like a day ago, 1 year later, another year later, 1 year ago. And you're like, wait, when is this happening?
Yeah, there's the title cards that I remember. One, of course, was 1 year later. Then soon after that was another year later. And then I'm pretty sure after another year later, we got like 10 days ago or something like that.
Yes.
And it was like, wait, 10 days ago from another year later? From the beginning?
So 355 days to say that. Or wait, no, that's not easier. Anyway, love that stuff. It's so fun.
We bring them up every time we do this convention, but I call that the Three Angels moment because there are these filmmakers that we love that we hope to spotlight in the future called Three Angels Power. They're not exactly a Christian film company, but their films sometimes will have philosophical or religious messages. But they have a film called Francesca Fingernails, and the film starts with the title card 36 hours earlier, or like 72 hours earlier, which I love. I love the idea of
starts with that.
That's the first thing you see in the film is like the film. Okay, picture where you are now. Well, the film is 3 days ago. I think that's like so genius. And this film like got into the Three Angels territory with that. So very cool. Loved Beckman.
But they didn't stick with that through the whole movie. It was just at the beginning, unfortunately. Not that it would have made sense later on, but, for us, for your favorite boys, why not?
For the people who are going to do an in-depth analysis of the film, a very, I think, fair and loving analysis of the film.
Maybe I'll edit it a little bit just by adding in some more of those title cards and nothing else.
I'd love to
jump around in time a little more.
Create a labyrinth of time. Oh, that would be so fun.
15 minutes ago.
1 minute later. Every scene has like a 1 minute later in between it. It's excruciating.
Or last week's movie with Paranormal, in the first 10 minutes, they kept showing us not just what time it was, but what the temperature was.
Oh, that was genius.
That added element.
You know what? I think I'm only now in this conversation appreciating the avant-garde genius of that. That was brilliant. All movies should do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was, we're still talking about it. Been talking about it for weeks. And I'm glad we're talking about Paranormal again, because that filmmaker, Matt Mitchell, as we were talking about earlier in this pod, he does go all the way, and he has a limited budget, but he's having a lot of fun with it. And because he is making it so enthusiastically, with unbridled passion, he is going all the way, and I think that what he's making is really charming and really complete, whereas Beckman feels really well made and a cool action movie, but it doesn't quite feel complete. And you gotta like follow your heart the whole way.
Yup.
Pretty much.
That's spot on.
For lack of a better term or understanding of how films get made.
Yeah. No, that's spot on. I think that's a great point of comparison. And yeah, I feel the same way about Matt Mitchell. Actually, I think, when we were reviewing Paranormal last week, I think at that point I felt like a bit like inundated with his work. We had like watched Paranormal several times. But now that I'm like a week removed from it even, I have to agree that like he's a brilliant filmmaker. I don't know. This is hard to say, but I feel like if I could give one of the filmmakers we've spotlighted, like if I was, rich and could say like, I'm going to give you $10 million to make a movie, like I would probably give it to Matt Mitchell, because I think he has a lot of potential and a heart and imagination, and he would do well to have like a properly financed feature. I think he would make a great one.
Yes. Although if I had $10 million for him, I'd probably ask him to make 3 movies with it.
Yeah. At this rate, I would ask him to make 10 movies.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, totally. Honestly, yeah, really. Because of all the movies we've covered, the 3 auteurs who have their most specific look and feel and passion behind it, I would say it's Matt Mitchell, Barbara Sundstrom.
Yes.
Who does the Crosswind Productions.
Queen.
Which, yes. And the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mm-hmm. Whoever the hell is doing their films.
Whoever that is. Oh my God. I pray that we will find out one day.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to speak with those people.
But the way that they make stuff is perfect. They should have exactly the amount of money that they always have for everything. Same with Barbara Sundstrom, Matt Mitchell. He gets the 10 million.
I love that. Oh, that's spot on. So, that was a pretty in-depth investigation into Beckman. One final thing I'd love to discuss is just again, really lean on the discussion of is the level of violence in this movie appropriate for Christian cinema? Is there anything that should be off limits within the realm of Christian cinema? As the lines between secular and spiritual film get blurred, why can't we curse in a Christian film? Why can't there be sex or violence in a Christian film that has an explicitly proselytizing message? I feel like I'm less sure of that every day,
Those things are in the Bible.
Right. I don't know, not to get too meta, but I curse on this podcast, but I sort of unironically think that this podcast is like a missioning tool sometimes. But I'm literally I don't know. This makes me feel I don't know. I feel like a little kid asking this question, but why can't I say the word fuck? Why is that not family friendly?
Because it's the difference between what's actually biblically based and what has been constructed into Christian culture by the patriarchy.
One thing that does fly is violence, specifically gun violence. I mean, watching Beckman, I couldn't help but think that there was a scene when he's everyone's holding an automatic weapon when they're in one of the assassin's place, one of the first people he hunts down after he goes back in the game, and everyone's holding an automatic weapon. And I was like, wait, is this scene not controversial just because everyone has automatic weapons? Is this basically the equivalent of showing a house with a refrigerator in it?
Yeah, it's just something you have at your house.
Right. Yeah. It's it's like an appliance basically. So maybe that's not even really a controversial image. I didn't really understand why that was considered family friendly, but why no one could say a curse word in the film.
And furthermore too, so I think they don't want to push boundaries, right? They don't want to push boundaries that have been put in place.
Right.
But for somebody to actually change their life and come to Christ, don't you have to push the biggest boundary you've ever pushed?
You have to shake people up.
So you can't just be we got to play it safe. We got to play it safe. We got to play it safe. Oh, by the way, are you willing to make the biggest change you've ever done in your life?
Yeah. And, then there's the question of how much of Christian film is to either flatter the viewer, if you look at it cynically, or just, provide an alternative to the viewer, if you look at it from a market perspective. Are these films going to convince anyone to come to Christ? Is that even the mission? Or are these films, do they already have an audience built in?
Are they trying to open your eyes or make your blinders more comfortable?
That's a great way to put it. I don't really know most of the time, it feels like. And it's tough to tell from this film. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still yearning. I mean, many films that we've watched I love, of course. It's my life. But I still feel like I'm waiting for the chosen director to make something that's explicitly coming from the realm of I'm a Christian and I want to promote a Christian message, who uses the art form of cinema to push boundaries, invoke a psychedelic experience. I only mean that in the sense of an ego or, whatever shattering experience in the way that some of my favorite films have done to me, and use that to invoke a message of godliness. I still feel like I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, where's the Gasper No Christian movie?
Yeah. Where's the David Lynch Christian movie? There's no reason why you couldn't use that type of tactics to promote an explicitly Christian message. Who knows? But
we'll see.
Yeah, but yeah, Beckman, as we've said several times through this, Beckman was far from a bad movie. It was actually a fun, extremely well done, classy action movie.
Yeah, very solid action outing. Just generally speaking, I'm not saying that for your usual Christian fare.
I agree. And because of that, you know, it just makes certain weaknesses of it more obvious. And that's why I couldn't help but harp on them here. But perfect film. How would you rate Beckman?
Another perfect film. I would give Beckman 3 out of 3 John Wick movies.
Yeah, I would say this film is 3 out of 3 Parabellums or something. I don't know, who the fuck cares. Let's see. As for me, I think Beckman was in some ways a technically and philosophically perfect film. I'm going to give this film 1 out of 4 Baldwin brothers. And that's a perfect score because you need one in your film to really cement it in the Christian genre. And
absolutely,
I feel good that we got Billy for a change.
Me too.
I got no problem with Steven, don't get me wrong, but Billy was just like a breath of fresh air, and he was a great actor in this. I thought his character was chilling, and the only complaint I have with him is that he wasn't in it enough,
For sure. Yeah. That he really is the one guy who was like, why didn't we see more of him?
Totally. Well, in that case, let me say our Boys Bible Study plugs. Of course, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to hear more, check out patreon.com/Boys Bible Study. Subscribe at the $5 tier or more, and you unlock our 2 or more bonus episodes that we give you every month. But if you only have $1 per month to spare, we'd love if you would pledge and you get invited to our patrons only live streams. Let's see, this one actually, yeah. So this episode is going to come out on November 1st. So we can announce that on November 8th. Sunday, November 8th will be our November patrons only live stream. Just pledge $1 anytime before then. You will get the link. We'll be watching some surprise Christian films with you, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I also want to have a special thanks to our patrons at the Patron Saint $20 tier. Thank you so much to Nicole, Marissa, and Russell. We really appreciate your support, and everyone who's supported us thus far on our journey of following the cinematic star of Bethlehem, to wherever it may lead us. This week it led us to Beckman, banger of a David A.R. White film. So in that case, on behalf of myself, my co-host Scott, our co-host Julian, we would like to say, as always on Boys Bible Study, peace be with you.
And with you.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I feel your love in me, it's coming from within. Oh my God, my devotion is so unwavering. Divine emotions when you enter me. Every day